Welcome, listeners, to Pop Screen, part of the Geek Show podcast network, where the Geek Show's show that likes to shine a spotlight on the good, the bad, and the ridiculous of movies, either starring, by, or about pop stars. No other podcast covers such a broad range of music, from country and western to hip-hop, from documentaries to science fiction. I'm your host, Graham Williamson. I'm a filmmaker and film critic for the Geek Show and Horrified, the British horror website, and I've been joined this week by
Cliff Barnes, host of the Devil Times 5 horror podcast, which is a comedy podcast about horror movies.
Nice. I mean, yours is a comedy podcast. We like to keep most episodes of this podcast light. This week, you know, we're going to do our best, listeners. We're really going to do our best.
Hey, we recorded an episode on Threads last night, so, you know.
Freaking hell. Wow, okay, fair enough.
There's nothing quite like rewatching Threads while taking notes to write jokes about
it. Yes. Just having some fun and riffing on Threads.
Yeah. It's quite funny. When you anything can be funny if you look at it in the right or wrong way. But it doesn't stop you thinking it's a fucking great film as well. Even if you are looking for the funny bits I don't think we didn't take the piss out of the film at all. But
no,
you know, you can find amusement in anything, as anyone who's ever been down a pub with their mates knows.
Yes. This week, we're covering Ben Drew's directorial debut, Ill Manors, which combines a famously tough musical genre, grime, captured right at the beginning of its commercial breakthrough, with a similarly unfriendly cinematic subgenre of British social realism. It was nevertheless a substantial hit, both in film form and as a tie-in album released under Drew's alter ego Plan B, buoyed by an uncanny topicality that saw it released 1 year after the 2011 English riots. Despite this, I found it slightly hard to track down. I had to order a DVD off Amazon, which left me with an Amazon recommendations list that is like full of Noel Clarke films now, which is probably enough to get me cancelled, and rightly so, I think. I welcome it.
Sorry, you're saying that you welcome being cancelled, or you welcome Noel Clarke being cancelled?
Well, both, actually, as it turns out.
You would welcome being cancelled?
I mean, I think I've earned it.
You edit this podcast, though. So if you leave something in that will cancel you, then that's a real cry for help.
I'm just worried that one day I'll leave my laptop behind and someone will open it up and see my email and say, let's have a look at what he's been ordering off Amazon. 4321? Oh dear, oh dear.
Well, whereas I would order box set DVDs of 321.
Yes. Maybe that's
big game show fan.
That's Noel Clarke's comeback. Maybe he's going to be tapped for the reboot of 321, which is probably coming on Dave fairly soon, isn't it?
Oh, I've wanted to bring back 321. I say I've wanted to bring back like I'm some fucking big shot TV producer, but it would be the perfect Saturday night shiny floor show. And
absolutely, yeah.
It's a variety show. You get like whatever acts are big, actors, pop stars, magicians, whatever. And it's a quiz, it's a game, it's a show, it's all in one. It's 321.
You could have brought it back when Dan Brown was big, because some of Ted Rogers' questions were like cracking some sort of hermeneutic code to find out secrets about the Gospels. I mean, they were pretty involved. They're very cryptic.
I think the first episode was Janice Long, the future DJ, won a St. Bernard dog, a live St. Bernard dog. That was the prize she won. There was an episode that Challenge never repeated because the subject matter, the theme of the evening was the British Empire, and had some very dodgy sketches.
Oh, God.
And did you know that the whole format was, I believe, created and originally presented in Spain by the guy who went on to direct the film Who Can Kill a Child?
Really? Did he work with one too many annoying kid contestants?
Well, I mean, it's a great film. It's a great game show. So maybe he was just multi-talented Renaissance man of
Maybe.
Spain. Yeah.
Much like, would you say, Ben Drew?
I would actually. I think he's a bit too much of a Renaissance man when it comes to his music, because I love his early stuff. I got into him in about 2005. Well, probably was 2005, because that's when Sick to Death appeared on the second Run the Road compilation. So that's where I first came across him. Love all his early work, when he was doing like just the nastiest, but also very funny hip hop, grime tracks. His music is brilliant, his beats are brilliant, and his rhymes and his lyrics are just insanely horrible. He fires out the F and C words like they're going out of fashion. Then of course there's 2010, he decided to do a kind of Motown-y soul album, which the Defamation of Strickland Banks, which I don't know, I just don't like it. It's horrible. His next album was the soundtrack to Ill Manors, so that's good. That's a good album. His most recent one from 2018, Heaven Before All Hell Breaks Loose, is just kind of pop rock. It's all right. It's not very distinctive. There's a few good hip hop moments, like where he, the old Plan B is back, but then like, there'll just be some dreary pop rock song. Fortunately, there's still no sign of his White Man's Reggae album that he's been threatening for years. The Ballad of
Wait,
Belmarsh.
no, I hadn't heard about that.
Oh, it was going to be the sequel to the Defamation of Strickland Banks, I think.
Oh man,
The Ballad of Belmarsh, or the next chapter in Strickland Banks' story, but as a reggae album.
Wow, I didn't know that. Yeah, I remember him talking about the Strickland Banks follow-up when he was promoting Heaven Before All Hell Breaks Loose, and he just said he felt like one of those comedians who gets identified with one catchphrase. He just wanted to kill Strickland Banks and never see that guy again.
Hang on, what was Strickland Banks' catchphrase? What was his?
Locks a lummy. I'm in jail for a crime I didn't commit. Yeah, another classic Plan B laugher there, I think.
No, if he's got a catchphrase, it's definitely got cunt in it.
But, yes. But that career takes you through some interesting kind of territory for British urban music. Because I remember at the time, Who Needs Actions, when You've Got Words came out, there was a consensus growing around grime, around the early Dizzy Rascal stuff and everything surrounding that was saying, okay, this is obviously really good and it's a real step forward for British hip hop. So why isn't it selling? And I think by the time Ill Manors had come out, it had started to break through in the mainstream. But certainly when Who Needs Actions, When You Got Words came out, grime was critically lauded but never sold.
Yeah, well, there's been two phases of grime, haven't there? There was the one back then in the noughties, going back earlier, I'm sure, and then the current wave where, like, this fucking top 5 records coming out your ass.
Yeah.
But in between was that bit where the likes of Tintry Strider, Tiny Temper, Dizzy Rascal even went pop. And Skepta, I mean, if you listen to Skepta's records from around that time, it's just it's an abomination, a lot of it. Yeah, so I think it had to go wrong to find its way back into actual huge success.
Yeah, and Strickland Banks was part of that interregnum, and I must say I'm much fonder of Strickland Banks than you, but I can understand seeing it as kind of a cowardly move. It's like he'd positioned himself on the most extreme end of a form of music that at that point was too extreme for the charts.
Yeah.
And then he took a few years off and thought, you know what I've always liked? The Temptations. Like, oh, okay.
Wearing a suit. Having a crew cut.
Yes.
No. yeah, I just don't. I can't get on board with that.
Yeah.
I was just starting to listen to that album again just before we started recording, just to go, maybe it was me. Maybe I should give it another go. And 3 tracks in, I'm like, no, this is just not good. And then I put on the because the 3rd track is "Stay Too Long," which is the hit off it. And I thought, oh, well, Pendulum did a remix of that. Maybe I've always quite like the Pendulum version, and no, the Pendulum version doesn't even save it. It's I'm sure Chase and Status did a remix, which might have been good. I don't know. I'll have to look it up.
But Ill Manors, we should talk about Ill Manors, because this was this conceived as a kind of a music film hybrid project, or did one grow out of the other? I've never quite found that out.
I don't know is the answer. I guess. Well, I'll tell you what. There's. Have you seen the short film Michelle, which is about 17 minutes long, and basically is in its entirety remade as a storyline in Ill Manors.
Yeah.
Now that is broken up by a different song that doesn't appear on Ill Manors, called Michelle. Which has Plan B on screen and his beatbox, Killer Keller is his name, as like kebab shop workers dancing in their little kebab shop aprons and I don't think they're aprons, but they're kebab shop uniforms, baseball caps and that. And it's that feels like an extended music video.
Yeah.
With lots of, drama, dialogue bits, but And yeah, I was wondering when I was watching that, was that conceived as a long form music video, or as a film where he'd get to show off his musical talent as well as his flourishing directorial talent? Strange thing about that film is that I think the acting in it, even though Ed Skrein and Anushka, what's her name, Anushka Mond, return in Ill Manors playing the same characters, I think they're pretty bad in it. Especially Anushka Mond, but it is made up by the fact that Neil Maskell turns up playing Terry at the end.
Yes, yeah, but that's a kind of experience thing, I guess, because there is. I reread some of the reviews from around the time that Ill Manors came out, and a lot of them say, "Oh, it's got this mix of like professional actors like Riz Ahmed and Natalie Prass, but also newcomers like," and it will name some of the people who were new at the time, and one of them is Ed Skrein, which I was surprised by, because of course now he's a pretty well-established screen presence. I mean, God, he's been in a Barry Jenkins film, for God's sake. And
has he? I can't say I've followed his acting career. The only other thing I know him from is off Plan B's first mini album, It's Time for Plan B. He's a feature on a track on that. They've got a really cool duet called What's It Like? What's It Like to Kill a Man? And it's about Plan B is being, which way around is it? One of them is kind of hoodwinking the other persuading the other into stabbing some guy, shanking some guy. And then it turns out at the end of the song that this guy was all in his head and he's just done it off his own back, but he's mental, basically. I'm sure it's a very sensitive depiction of paranoid schizophrenia, but it's a great song. That's the only other thing I know Ed Skrein from.
Oh, right. Because I assume that's who he was back then. I first encountered him through his acting. I think he had some notable duds when he first came out. He was in didn't they try and reboot The Transporter with him in the Jason Statham role? Which, was anyone crying out for a reboot of The Transporter? Yeah, it's one of those things.
Rings a bell.
Yeah.
They look best on films, Transporter.
Yeah. I mean, they weren't directed by him, but he produced them through.
Oh, produced them, right? Okay.
One of the sort of many French directors he has as sort of marionettes that he has.
I feel there should be a bell every time we mention someone who's been cancelled, so that'd be the second one.
Yes, the good old cancelled alarm. Yeah. We've just done a Michael Jackson episode too. Bloody hell, could have used that.
God, I watched Moonwalker so much when I was a kid.
Also, Moonraker, I imagine. Moonraker is a pretty good film to watch when you were a kid as well.
I've seen it. I've seen that once. Never been into James Bond. For Your Eyes Only is the only good James Bond film.
Anyway.
My stupid opinion. Yeah.
But yeah, Ed Skrein popped up in If Beale Street Could Talk as one of the cops who arrested the lead, again, for a crime he didn't commit, a very Strickland Banks-ish storyline. But yeah, he was really credible in that. He was really good. And he also earned some brownie points by walking off the Hellboy reboot, not just because it was the Hellboy reboot, although that would be, a valid reason to do it, but he found out that he'd been cast as a character who was Japanese in the comics and thought, no, I don't actually want to be complicit in whitewashing this thing. So yeah, I think he's going in a good direction.
All right. What was Layla Morse's character in the comics?
I'd forgotten she was in it, actually. Yeah, what a very odd moment. Yeah.
I've not seen it. I've seen the trailer, and I know Layla Morse was in it, and that's all I remember about Neil Marshall's Hellboy.
I think it's probably all Neil Marshall remembers about Neil Marshall's Hellboy by all accounts, but yeah.
Yes. So Ill Manors, I'll tell you what, it's as you know, I review everything I watch on Letterboxd.
Yeah.
As you seem to as well.
Yeah.
I am very stingy with my 5-star ratings. And there are only 27 films at present that have the 5-star rating from me, and Ill Manors is one of them. It's in my official top 27 of all time. Couldn't tell you whereabouts in the 27, but it's around the middle, I would say.
Yeah.
It's one of, I'm a cold-hearted bitch. I never feel anything, right? What about, films, world events, personal life, nothing. Never, nothing negative. I don't feel anything negative about anything, apart from, anger at the government and all that kind of shit. But, that goes without saying. But one of the reasons I love Ill Manors is because it does make me feel something. It does make me feel a bit sad. It makes me feel a bit, it gets you in the gut, it gets you in the heart. And there are other films in my exclusive 5-star list that are there for the same reason, like Dancer in the Dark, Carrie, of course, Landmine Goes Click. They're just films that just really hit you.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I suppose we're getting onto this topic of I think you've called them, haven't you, the British misery dramas, which isn't the official genre designation, but it's such a good one that I want to see. We should see if we can make it standard, I think.
Yeah, it's a genre you don't really like, isn't it? And you've been dipping your toe into and seeing if you can get on with them.
Yeah. So I have big problems with them, and I think I could sort of see it a bit when I had that season last year of rewatching them. I think part of the problem is that in the past, when you look at like the great works of the genre, like Cathy Come Home, or throw a dart at a wall full of Alan Clarke film titles and you'll hit an absolute classic. Part of the strength of them is that they could indulge in a kind of systemic critique. They could, it's like George Buchner's Wojciech. It could show you a character, it could show you his boss, and it could show you how the system represented by the boss works on that character. And by the end of Clarke's life, you've started to get this new form of government where any sort of power, whether it's financial power, government power, corporate power, is as distant from ordinary people's lives as it possibly can be. And I don't think British social realism has really reckoned with that yet. I think when you take the power structure out of British social realist film, it is what its detractors accuse it of often. It is just misery tourism sometimes.
But that's what I like. And I don't know if I say that because I live in a life of privilege and that, and haven't really been at the bottom of the heap. I wouldn't go so far as to call myself middle class, but I'm definitely from a middle class background. I just don't. It's I don't know. Am I ashamed? It's not a way of I think of myself. I don't know if I'm middle class, working class, whatever. It doesn't really. But that's the sort of thing
I think
someone with middle class
I'm
skills and shame would say, isn't it?
I'm working class, but I'm wearing a pink stripy shirt, so I can understand both sides of this debate.
I went to fairly posh schools, but I ended up buying a pub, liking grime music. I don't know what I don't know how you determine class in this day and age. But I do like. Is there such a thing as a British misery drama about middle class people?
I don't know. I'm sure some of Mike Leigh's films aren't always about the people who are on the absolute breadline, are they? Something like Another Year is, I guess, a middle class misery film, maybe.
Okay, I haven't seen that one. It just makes me think of like how he portrays the middle class people in High Hopes.
Of Abigail's Party. I mean,
Party,
think about it, the obvious example. Yeah.
But then, as figures of fun, it's comedy. It's not.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. No, the middle classes aren't miserable enough. I think we've established that.
Yeah, you can't really imagine a middle class Ill Manors, can you?
Not really, no. Yeah, but I got on
interesting experiment though.
Yeah.
Ooh.
What would the major traumas in a middle class neighborhood be?
I don't know, but I'm sure all the songs introducing the characters would be by Chris Martin.
Yeah. My God, if that isn't bleak, I don't know what is.
Exactly.
That's the thing, actually. We should mention that probably start off, because part of the reason why this punched a bit above the sort of British misery drama standard for me is that you do have these extraordinary sort of Greek chorus style musical numbers where each character gets their own track to introduce them, and it doesn't swing fully into music video mode. It is still narrative, but there is a kind of hybridization there that I found really exciting.
Yeah, they tend to be flashbacks, just running through the things that have gotten to this point in their life.
Yeah.
They're all absolutely miserable.
Yes, absolutely.
They're horrible stories, like down to a T. But that is Plan B's lyrical style, just describing horrible things that have happened to people. So it fits perfectly with. I think this film is the best kind of translation of a musician's style to the narrative drama format. Because it's just because he traded so much in his early days in like harrowing drama and horrible violence and sick humor. It's all there in the film, and when it bursts into these music video sections, it just it comes alive, and it's always alive all the way through, but it really flies.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of that's really comparable to it in terms of having a drama that is kind of musical, kind of a musical, but also kind of not, and does, as you say, translate a musician's vision to the screen into actual drama, is True Stories, the Talking Heads movie.
Oh, I don't know that.
Oh, it's wonderful. Tonally, the complete opposite to this. True Stories is as life-affirming as this is depressing, but it's an absolutely wonderful film, and it is David Byrne through and through. It could not be any more David Byrne-y.
I've got to be honest. I thought you meant Alan Bennett's Talking Heads.
It was my own fault, really. I found myself asking, is this really my beautiful home? And how did I get here?
So I was picturing something extremely different. Is Beryl Reid in it? Thora Hird? One of them.
I'd love to see Thora Hird in this. I think that was a casting trick that Ben Drew missed.
Oh, please not as one of the prostitutes. Yeah, there's not much space for an elderly woman and a mature lady actor in this film, is there?
Not entirely. No, it's a very young
it's a
cast.
very young film, very young.
Yeah. I think the one more senior role is Keith Coggins,
Yeah.
who I was astonished when I looked that guy up, because I thought this must be one of those sort of British character actors who specializes in gangster films and is, perfectly good at what he does. I don't watch many of those, so I'm not familiar with him, but man, he's good in this. And then I look him up. No, he's Ben Drew's godfather, not an actor at
Oh
all.
wow.
And
Oh wow.
he's just fucking great, isn't he?
He really is. He just seems such a natural.
Yeah.
He's great. Even if the first time you see him, he's bobbing up and down doing fairly unconvincing sex to poor Michelle.
I mean, I think there is maybe a certain type of Londoner where if you say to them, just pretend to be a gangster, they can do it bang on. It's just something that they teach kids in London schools, I guess. But even with that, he is uncannily good, I think.
Oh, I think you're right, but I think you're also flattering me because I am from South London,
and
really? I don't know if I could do that. I'd love to. I'd love to be able to act, but I just don't think. I'd love to give it a go. I think maybe when I'm older, I'm going to get into Amdram and see if I'm any good at it.
Yeah, never too late. I think there's a whole class of actors who maybe should just skip the young part of their career entirely and just turn up as a grizzled old character actor, because it's obviously what they're good at.
Well, I'm glad you think I'm going to end up grizzled. Thanks for that.
I like the word grizzled.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd like to be grizzled.
It's fine. Harry Dean Stanton carried it off very nicely, I thought.
I don't think I'd like to look like Harry Dean Stanton.
I don't think some of us have a choice in the matter.
I don't know. I was up in I won't say just in case it offends your audience. I was up somewhere in a different part of the country that weekend, and I met a couple of people who were round about my age, 143, 147, so 2 years either side. Both looked 60. So,
yeah. But yeah, that is the thing that I found I'm in my late 30s now, and I have noticed that when I meet people my age, they either look radically younger than me or radically older than me. It's the age at which it all goes haywire. You can't tell how old someone is anymore.
No, you really can't. Mind you, that was the case back in the day, because like sometimes you see some films from the 60s or whatever, and it's like there's an old woman in it, and then you look her up and she was 40. Like,
well, it always reminds me of when they did a very English Scandal, the BBC miniseries with Hugh Grant as Jeremy Thorpe. And everyone said, oh, Hugh Grant's in his 50s, and when this story starts, Jeremy Thorpe was like in his mid-30s. And think, yeah, but he was in his mid-30s by 60s politician standards, which is a very different age to mid-30s now.
Or even like when you watch Hitchcock films and see like your James Stewarts and people like that, you're like, I really can't tell how old this person's meant to be. Are they really 40 years senior than their love interest, or are they supposed to be about the same age? I can't tell.
Absolutely. But so these musical interludes, they start straight off. There's a song called I Am the Narrator, which I think is it's a good statement of purpose, not just the title, but it's got a Camille Saint-Saëns sample and a paraphrase of Cream by the Wu-Tang Clan, which in terms of announcing the breadth of what you're going to do with this movie, that's pretty great, I think. And it's done over this speeded up montage of people sort of going in and out of a flat that's being used for various illegal activities. It reminded me a bit of it's like it's a scene of a neighborhood. It's a scene of his version of Forest Gate, which, as he once rapped, doesn't have a forest and doesn't have a gate.
Or doesn't have a gate.
Yeah. And it felt very much like the flat scene in City of God, where they show how a flat kind of degenerated from being quite a nice place to live into this drugs den over so many years.
Okay.
So straight away, you've got a great range of musical references. He's clearly been watching the right films. And I just think there's a kind of flair to it. I think one of my problems with British social realism is it is made by people who seem to be putting a lot of effort into making this thing look as shit as possible. And that really isn't the case with Ill Manors.
No, it's I mean, because when you go to East London, it's not horrible. It's, you know, it's surrounded by sparkly buildings, and obviously then there are the places like the little shitty little parks where the drug dealers hang out and stuff. But on the whole, it's a nice looking place. So it would be, you know, it's not like St Maud, which is shot in Scarborough and looks as horrible as Scarborough. You know, on the end credits of St Maud, it says shot entirely in London. I wonder if the Scarborough Tourist Board were like, you cannot tell anyone where you filmed this.
Yes. Maybe that's true. Yeah, that's bizarre. I hadn't spotted that.
Anyway, yeah. It definitely sets the scene as a horrible place, but one that doesn't look. I mean, the house, the drugs den, the place where all the prostitutes are shooting up and these shady deals going all over the place. Then it cuts into that lovely close up of Ed, the drug dealer's phone, isn't it? Where there's he's got people called he's got contacts called Once a Week and Liability.
Yes.
It's one of the great classic East End insults. You fucking liability.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a great cast in here. I mean, we've mentioned Keith Coggins and Ed Skrein, but obviously the star role is Riz Ahmed, the extraordinary Riz Ahmed, isn't it?
He really is extraordinary. He doesn't get to do much until the second half of the film, really. He's very much in Ed's shadow. But there's always an intensity to his performances.
Completely,
and, and I mean, I think I'm probably the only person of his two roles last year playing musicians who are suddenly struck down by debilitating illnesses. I much preferred Mogul Mowgli over Sound of Metal, if only because in Mogul Mowgli, he gets to speak in his own voice. And instead of putting on an American accent.
Yeah, I'll have to say Mogul Mowgli. I did catch up with Sound of Metal a bit back and thought it was kind of an odd film because it's like co-written and directed by Darius Marder, but you would think that the writer and director were completely different people because the script is all about how this community of deaf people that Riz Ahmed finds himself at is like a radical community who want to challenge society's perceptions of disability. But what we actually see is like this weird little house on the prairie place where he just fixes gutters and everything. And it's like there's a need to like make a radical statement about disability in the film. There's a need to normalize in the film. And I don't think it really works out where the limits of those things are.
No, something didn't sit quite right for me on that film. Well, watch Mogul Mowgli, but be warned, British misery drama. So
I can go for that. I think my favorite kind of social realist films are the ones where there's just like one really incongruous star in it. And it's like, it goes back to my love of the Italian social realist films, which always start off with, you know, Anna Magnani is a housewife. And you think, no, she isn't. But within about 3 seconds of watching it, you've bought it completely.
Yeah. So he's great in it. And obviously also a rapper.
Yes, of course.
They said, like Ed Skrein. So I don't know how many other rappers have main roles. There are obviously a few popping up here and there in bit parts.
But there's
one significant one we'll come on to later.
Ahmed had collaborated with Plan B on some music before this as well, because they did the theme for Shifty, a little low-budget British movie that Ahmed did with Daniel Mays.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
So it's kind of, I think part of the strength of the movie is that for once in this country's fairly chaotic film industry, you have a guy who is making films with, his childhood friend, a guy who he'd worked on some music with, his own godfather. There is a kind of confidence to it. It's like, yeah, I'm the director. These people are on the same page as me. This is the story we're telling.
Isn't that very much like Nil by Mouth? Why that works?
Yeah.
Because like Gary Oldman was, obviously lived this life, or it was at least around these sort of people that the sort of people in Nil by Mouth, not the sort of people in Ill Manors. And yeah, that was filled with his sisters in it, and no doubt, some of the other bit parters and non-professional actors were people that he knew personally.
I think there's a warmth to it. I can see why people don't do it that often, because it always makes me think of, people like Shane Meadows and Pete Strickland, who use actors who they know personally, who maybe don't appear in a lot of other directors' films. And with Shane Meadows, I mean, all of his ensemble, all of his regulars are so fucking good. But it seems like it took about a decade for people to start casting Vicky McClure in other stuff, because there's like this feeling in the British film industry where if you do a lot of working class roles, it's like, oh, maybe they're just some chav kid. Maybe they're not acting. Like maybe they don't have to try.
Yeah,
and
yeah, absolutely.
It just takes so long to break through that, I think.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Mm.
Definitely true.
But, I think Ahmed was at exactly the right point in his career to do something with Plan B, because it's like it reconnects him a bit with his roots in hip hop, Ahmed with his roots in hip hop. But also by that point, he had done Four Lions. He was being talked about as a major sort of up and coming British talent. So they kind of feed off each other nicely. It's just at that right moment, I think.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, he's great. He's great. I'll watch him in pretty much anything these days, unless he does a Marvel movie.
He turned up as
which I'm sure he will.
in
I'm
Venom.
sure he will. Oh, because he's already done a Marvel movie.
He was kind of, he was the baddie in Venom, which is kind of Marvel orbital, I guess.
I haven't watched a Marvel movie since Howard the Duck. So.
Yes,
true fact.
Got out when the going was good, I see.
Yeah, exactly. Where next?
Yeah. So there's like two scores to this. There's the music that became part of the Ill Manors album, which we'll get onto. There's an instrumental score which includes popular classic FM favourites like "Your Mother Was a Prostitute," "See, It Didn't Kill Me, Did It?" and of course, "Did You Just Call Me a Cunt?"
That's all. I haven't listened to the instrumental album. I don't think it's that's all instrumental. Then is it?
Yeah, it's like I guess a more conventional film score without any of the rapping. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Actually, I think I've got it, but maybe I've listened to it. I don't know. I certainly didn't listen to it in preparation for this. Didn't seem necessary. But
the actual album Ill Manors bangs though, doesn't it? That's a really
it's brilliant.
Album.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Which has a number of guest spots on it, as you would expect from a hip hop album, but one extraordinary guest spot which I was very glad to see crop up in the film.
John Cooper Clarke.
John Cooper Clarke. What a wonderful, wonderful cameo that is.
I mean, I can't say I'm a fan of his work, but he is definitely a national treasure. It's always nice to see pop up on anything, really. I don't like poetry, therefore I do not like. I will not listen to a John Cooper Clarke album. But doing a feature on a Plan B track, it's good.
It's very cool. Yeah,
he's got such a great voice.
He does, yeah, and it reconnects him with where he came through, which is doing punk gigs. And I think it takes a certain degree of courage to stand in front of a load of amphetamine up, like Stiff Little Fingers fans or whatever, and say, I'm going to read some poems to you. But he is just absolutely compelling, and you can imagine that he can get an audience on his side in seconds.
Yeah, I do wonder if the Earl of Essex in what's the fucking place? Manor Park. Yeah,
Like
I
I
do
know
wonder if
London.
I do wonder if the Earl of Essex in Manor Park. I know they did have gigs.
Right.
It was shut. It was shut the year that this was filmed, so it obviously just shut, and then they used it to film in.
Yeah.
And I know they had some gigs, but I don't know if they'd have been able to get someone like John Cooper Clarke in.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, they might have. I don't know. You'd be
Well, it's
surprised
not.
who you can book with the if it's about who you know a lot of the time, isn't it?
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just assume it's one of those things like the Roadhouse in Twin Peaks, where they've just got a good booking
Got 9 Inch
manager.
Nails turning up.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. It's the least realistic thing about Twin Peaks. That there's, I mean, the Earl of Essex. I was wondering, it must have been shut by the time they filmed this, because, or maybe the fact that they filmed this film in there is why it's shut.
It's a dark legacy. I went to film in my favourite pub and I closed it down.
And it shut down because everyone goes, "Fucking hell, is that what it's like in there?" No, thank you. Landlords shagging prostitutes in the beer cellar.
Worst of all, they have an open mic poetry night.
Yeah, you're not saying John Cooper Clarke was open mic. What is that cybergoth doing there with the big green hair?
Oh yeah, that is quite odd, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't look like the crowd at all.
No, he must just be a John Cooper Clarke fan. I can buy that. But I think you'd at least bring some mates along for moral support if you're going to go to a pub like that, even if it was to watch your favourite performance poet.
Yeah.
How come no one's beating him up? How come no one in a pub like that is beating up a cybergoth? That's what I want to know. It ain't Camden.
So here's what I was wondering, though, when we started to review this, because I didn't see this film when it came out. So I watched it for the first time for this show. I wanted to catch it when it came out. It just slipped through the net. I don't know. It was one of those things. But my main memory of it coming out was that absolutely every single commentator had to talk about this in regards to the English riots, which of course were 10 years ago this year. And the British press has decided to mark this occasion by mentioning them for the first time in 10 years.
Well, the film starts with footage of people being interviewed after it, isn't it?
Oh, yes, it does, doesn't it? And yeah, that is genuine, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't contextualize it if you don't know what the footage is from. But there's a shot of two people having an argument outside a shop that's, on a street that's been trashed or whatever.
Yeah.
About what caused it. And then there's an interview, which I think I remember from Newsnight at the time, of some young guy talking about, what needs to be done to stop kids growing up wanting to riot and break the place up, which, is very optimistic of him. I mean, I think the main thing that we've done is for their parents to stop voting Tory governments in.
Yes, yeah, that's it. Yeah, but that is interesting because this seems to be one of the few cultural artifacts which actually said, why did this happen? Why did the people actually do it? Because there was a lot after it. There was a lot of pontificating about from people who had no knowledge of this, about what was causing it. David Starkey famously dropped a tab of acid before he went on to Newsnight, and he said, "It's because the black is white and the white is black, man, and the universe is turned inside out. It's doing my head in." That was his answer. And but there seems to be a reluctance to admit that this had social causes in the same way that everyone now agrees that, say, the Brixton riots did.
Well, David Starkey doesn't get to put his point of view across in this film, which I suppose some people might see as a flaw. But, but I wonder if he'd watch it and think, "Yeah, told you, see."
You know what? The thing that absolutely kills me about that David Starkey thing is I remember the week before it, he'd been complaining about the Tudors, the kind of bonkathon Henry
Right.
VIII series on Stars. And he said, yeah, this is happening because television, people who make television have no respect for experts. They wouldn't call the historian in to look at this. And then a week after this, he gets this phone call from Newsnight saying, hello, David, would you like to talk about inner city violence and drugs gangs? And at no point does he think, oh, no, I'm not an expert in that. I shouldn't talk about that. He probably just put the phone down and said, yeah, if it goes well, I can probably busk a bit of material about Anne of Cleves. And yeah, just wing it.
What were they thinking, booking him?
It's so fucking weird. He's not even a particularly good historian.
Yeah. Oh, fucking hell. World's gone shit, hasn't it? And it's all because of it's partly because of who the news programs booked to give their points of view.
It is largely because I think that if you want to understand what has happened in Britain over the past decade, you have to remember that about 10 years ago, someone invented a machine that would allow ordinary people to tell newspaper columnists what they thought of them. And that has turned every single person in the British media's brains into porridge.
Yeah. Yes, it's tragic.
But when this came out, The Observer did a feature where they handily got some of the worst cunts in Britain to say what they thought of Ill Manors, and
Why?
It's pretty impressive reading. It's like it's just a catalogue of denial, I think.
Oh, remind me who the worst cunts in Britain were in 2012.
Well, some of them are all
there's
right.
too many to count now.
Some of them are all right. They got Goldie in. I've got nothing against Goldie, but the byline on this, rather than give the byline to whatever miserable fucker had to actually assemble these things, the Observer byline is credited to Lethal Bizzle and Edwina Currie.
I love Lethal Bizzle.
Lethal Bizzle and Edwina Currie, though. I mean,
I love Lethal Bizzle.
It's the feature you never expected.
No. I can't abide Edwina Currie. I don't know. Biz, old Leith, old dench man himself. Very work out. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, there's some people I like in this, but they're I mean, Toby fucking Young's here.
Ugh.
And he talks about, this is the incredible thing about it, he talks about personal responsibility and how the film, says that, if you do something bad, if you commit a crime, that's your fault. Don't put it on the system, which I'm not convinced is the message of the film at all. But anyway, and you think that people's propensity towards criminality is defined by their skull shape. You are a literal fucking eugenicist. Where is the personal responsibility in that? You can be the nicest guy in the world, but if you just happen to have a sloping Cro-Magnon brain pan or whatever Victorian bollocks he believes in, you're a criminal. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, I think Toby Young must have left his brain at that pirate exhibition. If you remember that amazing story about him.
I mean, if you wanted to disprove any kind of theory that moral character is hereditary, just consider that Toby Young's dad was really smart and cool.
Who was that? I'm sure he was, but I've forgotten who it was. It's been so long.
It was Michael Young, the Labour Party affiliated philosopher and coiner of the term meritocracy.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay. I don't know if I ever knew that.
Yeah. God knows what went wrong. But anyway, so it's like...
Well, Alan Corran, Giles Corran.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, God.
Yeah.
But it is, I mean, it is one of those things where, as you say, it does have those clips from the aftermath of the riots in. It is aiming to comment on that, but I think ripping it out of that context, ripping it out of a context where Toby Young is being asked to say what this says about inner city youth after the riots, has done it a power of good, really. I don't think it's a narrowly political film. I think it has a kind of timeless quality.
It's a soap opera primarily. Plan B said that he told the story because it was a story that needed to be told to explain what drives people, or what it's not even what drives people to do what they do in this film, is it? It shows all sorts of different things. It shows bad people having moments of redemption, which, you know, by normal narrative standards, they don't necessarily deserve. It shows people acting horribly violently by accident, by coercion. It plays clever tricks with timeline as well. Like when you first see Katya leave her baby on the train.
Yes,
you assume she's abandoning her baby, just purely to abandon her baby because she can't, you know, look after it or whatever. And then very shortly after that, it's quite a subtle rewind, but you realise that you find out that she was just trying to trick her ex-pimp into thinking that she was getting on the train. But she got it wrong and fucked it up and left her kid on the train. So so it's not saying maybe it's saying like think twice about what you see from your point of view, because what Aaron, Riz Ahmed's character, sees from his point of view is a woman abandoning her baby, and then when the camera shows the same events from a different angle, you know, you see what really happened, and it's a bit more tragic than that.
Yeah, and a lot of the reviews at the time mentioned Pulp Fiction, and I'm sure Ben Drew probably is a Pulp Fiction fan, but it's also kind of rooted in the way that he tells stories in his raps, that something like Mr. Drug Dealer, the one that introduced Keith Coggins' character, is basically one long, but hold on, let's rewind this and look at it from another perspective moment.
Yeah. Well, that's more about introducing Chris, isn't it? His protege turned, well, because then before the film starts, Kirby has spent, what was it, several years in prison, 15 years of that, during which time
stretch.
During which time Chris has taken over and become, you know, Mr. Big, top man, top boy.
I watched All About Eve recently. I didn't realize that this was essentially the same plot, but it basically is, isn't it?
I've never seen All About Eve, nor do I know what it's about. So, apart from Showgirls is apparently based on All About Eve. So if it's, do you mean that it's the same plot as Showgirls?
I mean, now you mention it, yeah, let's push this. Let's push the boat out. Let's double down on this.
Right. So, well, there's no scene in a swimming pool, but there is like...
there is sex that is even less appetizing than the swimming pool scene in Showgirls. Yes.
Does anyone get pushed downstairs? Are there any monkeys? Is there a woman who wears a dress and that makes her tits go borrow? Don't think so. No, it's not much like Showgirls. Is there anyone in Ill Manors who was in Saved by the Bell? No.
Although I think Zach Morris is obviously the inspiration for Ed Skrein's character, right?
Yeah,
that's absolutely what Zach Morris does on his time off.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't. Isn't there a famous episode of Saved by the Bell where one of them gets addicted to diet pills or caffeine pills or something?
Yes, it's incredible. It's I think there's an excerpt of it in You Don't Know Me.
There is, isn't there? Yeah.
Yeah, the documentary about Showgirls that came out a couple of years back.
That's how I know about it.
Yeah.
Yes. So there's drugs.
Yeah.
There's some drugs. There's quite a lot of drugs in Ill Manors.
Yeah.
And anyway, should we move on?
I think we've kind of hit a wall.
Dead end, that one, isn't
it? Yeah, but it made me think sort of forwards and backwards a lot. I mean, You mentioned in your reviews on Letterboxd, you said that some people kind of have a problem with the fact that it doesn't have one linear plot. But it actually reminded me a lot.
I think I might have said it. People might have a problem with it not having a plot,
Well,
rather than
I've
yeah.
added the word linear because I'm pretentious, but that's basically your sentiment there, I think.
Well, more the point that it's I suppose it is my sentiment. Yeah. And that comment that some people have a problem with that was based on zero research. So, citations definitely needed in that case. But I assume it was a matter of assumption. I just know that most people don't like this fucking film.
Well, what the structure of it reminded me of, and the way that it hops back and forth between all these characters who were in the same neighborhood and having this sort of bleak existence, it reminded me a bit of the Alan Clarke film Road, which
I've not seen that one.
you would love Road. You would love Road so much. Look, it's a British social realist drama set on a council estate, and I gave it 5 stars. I gave it 5 stars. That's how good it is.
I mean, it's like I said, it's like soap opera. It's EastEnders, but after dark.
Yeah, very much.
So
yeah.
if you're all right with soaps, and their way of thing about soaps to keep production easy is that they tend to have each episode 3 stories that they cut between.
Yeah.
So there's not necessarily that much crossing between characters, interaction between the characters in a single episode from those 3 different storylines. So this is like several weeks worth of a soap all put together. In fact, I think one of the most incredible bits in it is the scene that the long scene that plays while Pity the Plight, the John Cooper Clarke song is playing.
Yeah.
Which shows pretty much the entirety of Jake, the kid, getting taken under Marcel's wing. Being inured. No, what's the word? Inveigled. What's the word? Brought into the world of gang violence and also
initiated.
Initiated. Yeah, loads of all the P, the money, the pound, and the drugs and the getting his first fuck today, as the lyric goes. Bust his first nut today. Lovely lyric. Resulting in that unfortunate murder and ultimately in his own death, all within, I don't know how long that sequence lasts. It's about maybe 10 minutes. And the fact that it's this self-contained little story, like that could be a short film in itself, that section, is really horrible because you're only just getting to know this kid. You see his potential, I suppose. You certainly see his vulnerability. That bit where Marcel gives him the gun and tells him to kill an unnamed person who turns out to be Kirby. And Jake suddenly goes, I don't think I can do that. I've just been acting hard all day. I love that. And even that sequence has a little kind of Pulp Fiction-y rewind. So that you see the same scene from 2 different angles. You have no idea that they were happening at the same time. Until it's suddenly, it's so good. It's such a great little sequence.
And that's part of the reason why I think it broke through my resistance to a lot of these films, because if this was presented as a standard drama, which has no musical element whatsoever, and it just has these stories, I think my immediate reaction would be, all right, but is it really this bleak? Do all these things always happen at the same time? And it's like the fact that you can use the music to compress time or rewind time or control the narrative in some ways makes that complaint irrelevant. It's like, these are all things that, really happen in the world. They maybe don't happen, back to back, but then they don't happen in the film back to back either. It buys it some artistic license to get past that sort of that thing the British social realist films always do that I hate, which is stamp their foot and insist, no, this is absolutely what the world is like right now. It gives it that artistic element that I think makes it more justifiable and more interesting as social commentary.
Yeah, I've always wondered, is it Peter Mullins who made Tyrannosaur?
Paddy Considine directed Tyrannosaur.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, of course. Peter Mullins, the guy in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's him and Olivia Colman in it. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I've always wondered the fact that opens with Peter Mullins kicking his dog to death. Is that like, like, hello, here is the most cliched British misery porn ever. It's going to begin with a drunk guy kicking his dog to death. It lets you know what you're in for. It's a good film.
It is a good film. I think I've read an interview with Considine where he said he was mainly interested in thinking, you know, what's the worst thing I can introduce someone doing and have the audience sort of reeled back in with them. You know, can they actually like this guy after he does that? And I think, yeah, ultimately a bit. Yeah.
I don't think so. Not when you've got Olivia Colman opposite him. You're never going to prefer him, are you, to Olivia Colman?
I'm not saying he's the best guy, but he's better than he looks at the start. And Peter Mullen is one of my favourite actors too. I absolutely adore that guy. So
he's very good. So the other thing in that sequence is that's where we really get to know Jodie and Carmel, who sorry, not Carmel, Chanel. Jodie and Chanel, who are. I wish there was a sitcom spin-off about them. And it would have. I think it would have to be called "Am I a Dickhead?" Which seems to be Jodie's catchphrase.
I think that's great too, because they have, like Jake, they are at the start, they are like a shaft of innocence in this very bleak world. They are just kids doing just kid stuff, but with Jake, it gets taken and corrupted into something else, and that, of course, rebounds on them. But it's such a beautiful piece of structural paralleling. He's got to do another film, right? Plan B. It would be maddening if he just did this.
But you know, there was a Guardian article yesterday, wasn't there, saying just pointing out how many British directors make one film and you just never,
absolutely,
they never get to do anything else. It's really, really sad. I don't know. I don't know if they came up with any reasons why that is, or if they suggested any way of getting around it. But I mean, it's really odd. It's really odd because I mean, we're still waiting for Gary Oldman's second film, aren't we?
That's very true. Yeah, every sort of 5 years he says he's definitely got that biopic of Edward Muybridge set up, and never happens. Never happens.
That doesn't sound that miserable, does it?
I didn't know Edward Muybridge had a bloody bleak life.
He's the guy who did the photograph someone running, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The flying horse photographs and all of those sort of pre-cinematic stuff. Yeah, he had. He was one of quite a few guys in America at that time who worked on the railroads or in the mines, I forget which, and he had a traumatic brain injury that completely altered his personality, and he was on trial for murder much later. He was, and it was found that he did kill the guy, but I think he was found innocent through diminished responsibility, because they successfully argued that this injury he had altered his personality to the extent that he can't be held responsible.
So he wasn't just trying to take a burst shot of a murder.
No. He wasn't trying to have a series of arty photographs of a guy falling to the floor.
You never know.
Could have been, I guess.
Where do you want to go next?
Well, we're about an hour and 5 minutes in. I guess we could sort of think about wrapping this up. We have took some detours, I think it's fair to say.
We've barely spoken about the content of the film, but something that struck a chord with me is the bit where Aaron's social worker advises him to take his cap off, and he might attract less negative police attention.
Yes,
because when one memorable night I spent in the East End, I went to Lee Hurst's Backyard Comedy Club, and I was having a really bad hair day, so I was definitely wearing a hat that day. And he does not like people wearing hats in his club, and he told me to take it off from the stage several times, and then put it back on. And he, like during the second or third interval, whatever, he came up to me and said, "Look, mate, He's another prick, isn't he?
Yes, yes.
He really is a fucking prick. I was like, well, what have you got against hats, Lee Hurst? And he was like, well, you don't understand. It's the East End. Anyone who wears a hat is trouble. And I don't think that's the case.
East End regularly beset by marauding hat wearers. Yes, we all remember that news story.
But I did say to him, look, I'm having a bad hair day. Not that you'd understand that. Somehow managed not to get kicked out of his club. What a wanker.
That's great. He's probably doing the same thing now for people who've been vaccinated, isn't he?
Yeah.
Just sort of seeing if you've got a slightly sore upper arm and just booting you out of his club. Yeah, it would not surprise me. I know a lot of people who work with him, but they're in it for the money. Yeah. I hope they struggle with their conscience over it. I mean, it's a nice big venue. I can see why people would want to use it and work there. It's so
when
weird.
Your boss is Lee Hurst.
Yeah, you think the 90s were maybe that last time where you could just look into a TV and music career for a couple of years and be set up for life. That does not happen so much anymore, I think.
No, so now you have to become a right-wing twat on Twitter.
Yes.
And then you're guaranteed work.
Yes.
Until you go too far. What else did I want to say about it? Another bit that struck a chord was when a flute-playing beatboxer turns up, because we got one of them down underneath the station.
Oh, no way.
Huh. A little busker who plays flute and beatboxes. It's quite good. There
was a story recently where people found out that Andre Benjamin had signed up for Noah Baumbach's new adaptation of White Noise by Don DeLillo because they spotted him wandering around the filming locations playing a flute. And apparently that's what he always does now. If you want to know where Andre Benjamin is, just look for a guy playing a flute. He always wanders around playing a flute. That's his thing.
I don't think it would look incongruous. He looks like the sort of guy who would play a flute.
Absolutely.
Just while walking down the street.
I don't think there is any way that Andre Benjamin could blend in, really, is there? He might as well play it up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I bet he goes incognito sometimes, but such is fame. Got nothing against people dressing up. But I do have something against people being ostentatiously twattish. And just like, if you're Andre 3000, you can do whatever the fuck you like.
You completely can. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I feel like my sense of what is appropriate to wear at any given time has been like destroyed by a childhood watching Doctor Who, but I
can imagine. I sort of feel I should dress a little bit more flamboyantly. I don't know if flamboyant's quite the word, but certainly I'm getting on a bit. Got to find ways of keeping my look exciting, I suppose. I've looked like this for 25 years. Got to change it up a bit eventually, surely.
Yeah, you earn the right to do it after a while, don't you?
Yeah.
I
reckon. Yeah. What else are we going to say about this? I like the bit where Jodie and Chanel are at Kirby's house and he brings in vodka and orange for them and says drinky poos, because it reminded me of my friend Nathan Cassidy's best ever tweet, which went along the lines of drinky poo. Oh yeah, cool, very nice. Okay, how about an eaty poo? No thanks.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's great. A very very Pasolini-esque mental image there.
Yeah, I suppose it is. I mean, I love this film. I did wonder at the end when Aaron's reading the letter from his mum, in that sad moment, after all. Could you figure out what it was that it says in there on that? Because you only see like little close-ups of it scrolling past, and there was something about we were involved politically, ... which unfortunately, which tragically resulted ... And I wonder what that was about and why you don't see what it was.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? It works as a kind of brief impression of what's been happening. I wonder if maybe there was a subplot that they shot that just didn't work, and that's all that's left of it. What I would want is someone to mash up that scene with the letters that Toby Jones gets from home in Barbarian Sound Studio.
Oh.
I want Riz Ahmed there hearing about the goshawk nesting in the back garden.
Yeah. And in that same scene, the big Ed was ear graffiti. It's like, I mean, were people still writing thingy was ear in 2012?
No, I
was half expected to see a little man with a big nose with his hands poking over the top of a wall.
It's one of those things, isn't it, where graffiti is now such a recognized art form that even if you're just some twat spraying your name, you've got to like be a bit ambitious, haven't you? You can't just say you was here.
No, not at all. No. Why did the phrase "watch out, there's a Humphrey about" spring into my mind? Was that a big graffiti thing? I don't think it was. That was an advert for milk. I don't think it had anything to do with graffiti at all.
Set off an extraordinary mind bomb. Yeah, that's not something I've had to think about for years.
Yeah, I don't think there is any milk in this. I'll tell you what, though, in the short film version of Michelle, there is a quite horrible joke when the pub landlord and his mate are shagging Michelle. What do you call a brass with a runny nose? Full up.
Fucking hell. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't want this to sound like a criticism, because I think in another artist it would be a criticism, but I think Bendrew really sort of relishes the really bleak bits of this. And I think...
Oh, of course he does.
And I think
if you've heard it, you've heard his music. Yeah. I mean, that basically that entire first mini album, It's Time for Plan B, is just full of the most horrific imagery.
Paint It Blacker has that one about the Camden Ripper, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, wow, you've heard that? I don't know how well known that album is, because bootleg, an unofficial bootleg thing, isn't it?
It is pretty obscure. Yeah, it came to my attention because I remember I did read a blog when Ill Manors, the song, came out, and everyone was talking about it as being like the first great processed song of the decade. And someone said it is really hard to reconcile the guy who is writing the first great protest song of the decade to the guy who is like dubbing chainsaw sound effects onto a song about a real life serial killer. And it's like, well, in theory, yes. When you hear the actual music, maybe not. I don't know.
But then there is a song about that on Paint It Blacker, isn't there? The one that samples Larrikin Larkin, I think. What's it called? Knoxville Girl. The one, so not the one with Larrikin Love, that's what I meant, but it's not that one. It's Knoxville Girl, isn't it? The one that's all about murder ballads and how it's a long standing art form singing about murders and that.
Yeah,
it's a good song. Unfortunately, followed by Chris Martin's voice on the sample over a Rick Ross sample on the next track. But
he doesn't always have the best taste in collaborators, does he? I mean, we've talked about Riz Ahmed. Yep, great, no problems there. Ed Skrein, he certainly got a very fine performance out of him in this. But there was a remix of, was it Deepest Shame? Which had Ed Sheeran on the remix.
I can't stand Ed Sheeran, obviously, like any right-thinking person, but I will say he is a good rapper when he does a feature on a. If that's what he was doing on that song, then he is actually a half decent rapper. So
It did remind me how Ed Sheeran also made his breakthrough with a song about a woman forced into prostitution, just with like a mildly different tone, I would say.
Oh, just a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Just slightly different. Yeah, just like kind of probably #1 hit and played on radio all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wonder how much you have to be a fan of Plan B's darker lyrics to get the most out of Ill Manors. Because I know one of my mates, he doesn't like Ill Manors and he doesn't like Plan B's lyrics. And I think that he finds lines like, I'll stick you in the eye with a biro, the same biro you use to write your fucking gyro. He thinks that's stupid.
Come on, man.
Whereas it's clearly brilliant.
Yes. I think it's one of the things where if you actively disliked Plan B, it would be a problem. But I think if you have no particular opinion on Plan B, this probably works, right? It's a good film.
I mean, it is a good film. It's a fucking brilliant film. Like I say, it's in my all-time top 27, and this is an important distinction. Those 27 from the next 3.
Yeah, you can't possibly round it out by putting some mere 4.5-star films in. That just undermines the integrity of the whole operation.
Completely different kind of level of brilliance. 5-star films are the ones that just make me feel things that nothing else does.
Yeah.
On the whole, anything from Toy Story is a 5-star film in my book.
Absolutely,
it's just so lovely. Yeah. It's so lovely. Yeah, like I said, Landmine Goes Click, which is one of the most horrible things I've ever seen, but it's so shocking and just leaves you absolutely shattered. So, you know. As long as something makes me feel like, and a 4.5-star is a film that makes me think about it ages afterwards, and I want to look up stuff about it and read more about it, and listen to the commentary tracks. I just want more of it, because it was so brilliant. And that's my 2 levels of absolute brilliance. But the 5-star ones are almost invariably the ones that make me go, fucking hell, that's knocked me out. It's just like completely thrilled me for 2 hours or whatever, or it's made me the closest I've ever come in my life to crying, like Dancer in the Dark. But
yes,
it's never actually drawn a tear because I am a cold dead bitch.
I think that's a great note to end on. Just not even the sentiment, just the phrase "cold dead bitch."
Cold dead bitch.
Yeah.
Quietly, which, funnily enough, is how Dancer in the Dark ends. I can't believe it.
It's probably a lyric on this album too. Yeah.
yeah.
But yes, if you enjoyed that, listeners, and my God, why wouldn't you? You can subscribe to our Patreon, where you get a bonus episode of Pop Skrein every month, access to our other movie podcast, Director's Lottery, my Doctor Who reviews, and also any outtakes that we do, which I think are worth sharing. So some of the things that are maybe libelous. Yeah. But until next week, when we come back with more Pop Skrein, I've been Graham.
I'm Cliff, and you can find me at the Devil Times 5 Horror Podcast on SoundCloud.
And we'll see you next week.